The defending Super Bowl 57 champion Kansas City Chiefs continue their work here in St. Joseph, Missouri, on the campus of Missouri Western State University. The Chiefs back in pads today with a longer practice as they continue to grind away. And hello, everybody. I'm Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs, along with senior team reporter Matt McMullen. By the way, our live stream this morning is brought to you by Mosaic Life Care, the proud presenting partner and official healthcare provider of the Kansas City Chiefs training camp. Again, they serve southeast Nebraska, southwest Iowa, northeast Kansas, and, of course, northwest Missouri here in St. Joe. It had to be raining, right? It's a live stream.
Yeah, it only rains on our live stream days. But it's not so bad out here. It's like 79 degrees, too, so thankfully the storms earlier cooled everything off. It's another padded practice here today. It's a tough day for the guys because they had 3 padded practices in a row over the weekend. Then a lighter practice a couple days ago, an off day yesterday. But now they're back in pads, and thankfully it's not very hot.
Again, there's a high volume of offense and defense for this team. I would venture to say the most volume collectively of offense and defense of any of the 32 teams in the National Football League. And we see that volume come into play today. Different combinations, whether it's the offensive line with the first, second, and third group, there's 16 offensive linemen here, or the personnel groupings on offense. If you followed this team in the 10 years, now 11th of Andy Reid, you know how that goes. But defensively, it's the same way. And if there's something that's been impressed on me in these first 2 weeks of camp has been the increased talent level of defense and allows Steve Spagnuolo to be, I think, even more creative.
Absolutely. And just part of what Coach Reid does and what he's so good at is using all the time out here efficiently. And Steve Spagnuolo is the same way. If you're trying to figure out who the second, third, and maybe fourth teams are, you're going to have trouble because he rotates so many different guys in. And that's so guys are ready when their number is called during the season. Think about last year, how many players had to step up in major moments. They were ready for those moments because of all the work they got in during training camp. So we're about halfway through camp right now, but we're seeing a lot of great things from our young defense.
And in pads, you mentioned pads, the 3 in pads, and then there was a lighter practice on Monday, then the day off for the players, and then back in pads today. This starts now, it's a second push, if you will, through the weekend for this team. But that means 9 on 7. That means 11 on 11. That means they're not taking guys to the ground, but you're seeing some thumping going on. And that's always the next step, especially for younger players, to see how they handle the padded practices.
Well, if you think about the offseason training program, OTAs, minicamp, all that stuff, they can't wear pads during any of that, and they can't hit each other. It's all just in shirts and shorts. There's a lot of mental work done during that time, and that's very important. We talk about that in the offseason, how important it really is. But yeah, to play football, you have to wear pads, and you figure out physically where you are. And I've been, again, very encouraged over the last several days seeing where these guys are at right now. But the challenge is to keep it going because training camp is such a grind. But again, we're seeing some really great things so far.
And then Coach will do laboratory testing, basically, of real-world situations that he does almost every day. And so when you see a team executed during the season, it's something they've rehearsed over and over and over again, but sometimes it's very specific what they work on.
Absolutely. You have to be ready for every single moment and situation during the season. Why are the Chiefs the best team in the NFL in September every single year since Coach Reid got here in 2013? Well, they're ready for moments early in the season, but also late in the year. They're conditioned for those moments. All those great fourth quarter comebacks where we're nervous watching it, right? But the players aren't nervous because they've practiced these things and they're ready for it. Patrick Mahomes mentions that all the time after all these great comebacks. We are ready for this moment, and it doesn't happen just in practice. It begins here in training camp.
And they work on it right here and today. Again, we're brought to you by Mosaic Life Care, which is the presenting partner here at Kansas City Chiefs training camp. Their headquarters is here in St. Joseph. All right, we're going to focus today on 2 groups. One is the wide receiver group, which a lot of you have asked about since, February, since the Super Bowl 57 parade. And then 2 on the linebacker core. But let's just gloss over the wide receiver core, and then I had a chance to talk to Marquez Valdes-Scantling. But first, your overall impression on this group, and then after we talk to Marquez, we're going to dive into these guys individually.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's 13 receivers on the roster right now, and if you just look at roster math, the most receivers the Chiefs have kept on the Week 1 roster in the Coach Reid era is 6. And there's a handful of guys that we know are likely locks to make the team, right? Guys like Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, Rashee Rice. But then there's 8 other players who we don't know if they're going to make the team or not because they have to earn that spot on the team. And there's a lot of competition at the bottom end of this receiver core between guys like Richie James, Justin Watson, Justin Ross, and so many others. That's a good thing. And there's so much competition in that room and in that group that we're going to get the best players in that 5th and 6th spot. So I'm excited about that competition, and we're seeing that so far.
1 year ago, the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. They had to replace 170 targets to Tyreek Hill in the 2021 season. This year, they have to replace the 101 targets to Juju Smith-Schuster in last year's run to the Lombardi Trophy. A key piece could be Marquez Valdes-Scantling going to another level. I had a chance to talk to Marquez early in the week. People talk about year 1 to year 2 in the league, but year 1 to year 2 in a system. Tell us about that and how that's been for you so far.
Just getting on the same page with Pat. It's been great, man. Being able to coach the young guys up, knowing what to do and not having to ask questions. It's become so much easier just to operate and move on a day in and day out basis. Now the younger guys are coming and asking me questions. Even though I was kind of in that same role last year, I was learning just like how they were learning. And now, I can teach. And, it's a good feeling, being the oldest guy in the room and, guys looking up to you, it's an honor.
Some systems, some guys get pigeonholed in this league, right? They're an X, they're an X, they're an X. You're now moving around.
Yeah.
And in this offense, the fact, how much do you like that and how much of a challenge has that been?
I think Coach Reed is the best to ever do it. And so, having an offensive genius like that, a guru, if you will, to, be able to get guys to move around and get guys in different positions, I think it's great. It never puts one guy in a box. It doesn't limit you and, what you can do. Obviously you excel at, 1 or 2 things is why you got here. But then he expands on those strengths and also makes your weaknesses your strengths as well.
Final question has to do with the Cincinnati game in the AFC Championship and the fact that you had to be the guy. You became the guy. How much did that do for you and propel you into the offseason?
It didn't do anything, to be honest, man. This is who I am. I always want to be the guy, so it's never a question. And then obviously, if you look like this, you never want to look like that. But it's one of those things where I have the utmost confidence in myself. This is why I came here. To be one of those guys that helps this team win. So whatever that is, if it's 1 catch, 10 catches, 1 yard, 100 yards, I know that I'm always going to believe in myself, and I know the staff believes in me as well.
Awesome. Now you get 2 questions.
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
Okay, here we go.
All right, we're here with MBS. So how does it feel to be the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs? What does that do for you on a day in and day out basis?
It's awesome. When you see all these fans, and this team is awesome, man. These are great guys. I love our guys. But then I see you make the play when you go down on your backside in the AFC Championship for a touchdown, Kansas City, man. It takes chills down my spine.
I love it. And so being this is your, 4700th training camp, does it get any different, seeing new fans come in and out, and what is that experience for you, seeing these fans and you being a staple for this organization?
You actually have a future in this because it's an awesome question. I will tell you, every year feels like my rookie year, man. That stomach churn, you come into camp, you want to I don't know if I want to puke or go to the bathroom. It's all that, man. It's all
Love it. Thank you. Here with MVS.
All right, bro. Thanks. Hey, who's interviewing whom here, right? I think Marquez wants to be guest host during our next live stream, which will be Friday, although I think Coach Reed will beg to differ. But it's in the discussion. Last year he had 42 catches. That's a career high. He had the game against Cincinnati, the best game of his career when the Chiefs needed him the most. They were down to the last guys, basically, wide receiver, 6 catches, 111, and that touchdown when he backed into the end zone is what we alluded to when he asked me the question. But for Marquez Valdes-Scantling, we're seeing more put on his plate. And keep in mind, if you're a wide receiver in this offense, Matt and I talk about it all the time, you have to know everything. You're not just an X, you're not just a Z or a slot, you're everything.
Yeah, and first of all, when you're a team like the Chiefs, of course, regular season numbers are important, but when you sign players in free agency, it's all about the playoffs. What are you going to do in the biggest moments of the season? And we can't understate how important Marquez was in that Bengals game when so many players were hurt. We lost so many players to injury. Some guys couldn't even suit up for that game. And you have players like Marcus Kemp, who did his best but didn't have a lot of experience, right? Lining up at wide receiver in a conference title game. Well, you rely on Marquez Valdes-Scantling in that moment. And he was huge in that game. And that does a lot for his confidence, I believe, as well moving forward. Now, what can he do in his second year with the Chiefs? Well, look at last year. We saw his speed on full display several times. He had 7 catches of 25 or more yards. That ranked second on the team behind only Travis Kelce, who had 13 of them. He also averaged 16.4 yards per catch. That led the team and ranked 4th in the NFL. We know what he can do as a deep threat. I think the next step for him is developing more chemistry with Patrick Mahomes moving forward. So it's not just big plays down the field, it's big touchdowns down the field. And I've been seeing that so far in this training camp where they're really synced up. Their rapport is really increased, I think, where Patrick Mahomes is hitting Marquez for some big plays in stride deep down the field. So I'm hoping for more of that this season.
The other thing I'm looking for, too, is consistent tough catches, right? The yards per catch average has been in Marquez's game since he was a Green Bay Packer. He led the league in that category just a couple seasons ago. But keep in mind, Juju Smith-Schuster's value last year was, in fact, of being a chain mover. This team had to adjust its offense with teams backing up their coverage and playing underneath and then also breaking tackles. So that's a next step, I think, for Marquez Valdes-Scantling in his career. But that next step also could be made for a guy that we have seen do it in training camp and doing it on a consistent basis, and that is Sky Moore. And to me, he's one of the leaders. We'll get into this maybe on a podcast later or one of our live streams from here in St. Joseph. But to me, another big piece of this camp so far has seen the jump of those guys who were pressed into action, and they were stars many times in their first year. But the second year, to me, Sky Moore has been almost the most interesting of those guys because you can see Coach Reed is putting a lot more on his plate.
I was with Dante Hall earlier this offseason, and I asked him, hey, can plays like what Sky did in the AFC title game with that big punt return to set up Harrison Butker's game-winning field goal and his touchdown in the Super Bowl, can those little things really affect a player's confidence moving forward? And Dante said, absolutely it can. And we've seen that carry over through the entire offseason training program and into this training camp. You're right. They've put a ton on his plate, and he's been great. I mean, he's really taken advantage of his opportunity. There's been a great volume, once again, where, hey, let's put Sky in all these different situations and see how he handles it. And truly, he's just been really one of the best players, I think, in that receiver room through the entire offseason training program. I asked Justin Watson about it a few days ago. He said he's been outstanding all spring and summer long. It's a matter of continuing that. Got to do it in games. But at least so far, I'm very encouraged by what we've seen from Sky Moore so far.
And let's go to Justin Watson. Don't take him for granted, okay? The 67-yard touchdown against the Raiders got things started in that huge game late in the year, which basically sealed the 1 seed. Then he had the 41-yard touchdown against the Chargers earlier in the year. Don't overlook, though, his play against Jacksonville in the playoffs. He had a gigantic catch there. So for Justin Watson, he's the guy they're like, oh, yeah, I forget about Justin Watson, but don't forget about him. He has value to this team and in special teams.
He's a great example of how players, if maybe they're not on the radar in the spring, they can emerge during this time and make the football team, because that's what happened last year with Justin Watson. When he signed with the Chiefs, I don't think anyone in the spring was saying, hey, that guy's a bona fide starter right away, but he showed what he could do throughout the offseason training program last year, impressed in training camp, impressed in the preseason, and then had 15 grabs for 315 yards, and as you said, averaged 21 yards per reception last season. Helped the Chiefs win some games, particularly week 2 against the Chargers early in the year, and had that big play against the Raiders late in the season. So absolutely. Now Justin Watson has to once again earn a role on this team, but he's having a really solid camp so far too. And again, he's a great example for all the players out here. Even if you're not a big name coming in, you can make this football team.
You remember Kadarius Toney, the one-hop touchdown in the end zone up the right boundary at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium. You'll mostly remember him for that 65-yard punt return, the longest in Super Bowl history, which allowed the Chiefs to take an 8-point lead against the Eagles in the fourth quarter. He's injured. He has had some surgery, and so he's on the shelf. Hopefully, well, we'll just monitor it day by day and week by week with KT. But let's move on here to guys that you maybe don't necessarily know about. And there are 3 in this category. You've maybe studied him a bit, but this is a big camp. Every day's big for these guys. But Richie James Jr., when we signed Richie, I went back to the moment where he returned 2 kicks for the 49ers against the Chiefs in Super Bowl 54. But to me, you can see in this camp where he could potentially be an asset. he was very impactful for the New York Giants, particularly late in the season last year. They were starting to rely on him a bit, but I'm intrigued by Richie James Jr., and then also his ability, maybe if he can capture the punt returning role.
This could be a Brett Veach special, just an undercover signing that ends up being a big deal. You're right, he had a breakout season for New York last season, set career bests in catches with 57, receiving yards with 569, and touchdowns with 4. For context, he would have ranked 3rd on the Chiefs in receptions last season. Now, he has great speed and agility, and we've seen that throughout this training camp, just juking defenders out. But also, I'm impressed with what he can do as a receiver over the middle of the field. Think about a chain mover on 3rd down. 53% of his catches last season were over the middle, and he's also sure-handed. Only 3 drops on 67 targets last season, and as you said, could be a punt returner as well. Had 24 returns for the Giants last year. Really a versatile player who can do a bunch of stuff. Excited about Richie James.
2 guys I'm going to lump together here. One is Rashee Rice, who the Chiefs, of course, selected in the 2nd round of the draft in the 2023 NFL Draft. The other would be Justin Ross, the former Clemson star who had the incredible national championship game, but he's been plagued by injuries. He could be a social media influencer if the NFL thing doesn't work out, because social media is just enamored with Justin Ross. But those 2 guys now have had moments in this camp. It's not going to be instant oatmeal for them, but you see enough positive glimpses here. These guys could help the Chiefs win games this season.
I'll start with Rashee Rice. We've seen a gradual increase in his comfort level in the offense really since rookie minicamp, and you want to see that. You want to see growth every single day, and we have. One of the things that excites me most about him is what he can do after the catch. And I'm not just talking about deep down the field. I'm talking about behind the line of scrimmage. What can he do after a quick pop pass or an end around, stuff like that. If you look back at day 2 of draft weekend, Assistant General Manager Mike Borgonzi mentioned that Rashee is like a running back after the catch. He's violent. And we saw that a few days ago in one of our practices here, one of our padded practices. He took an end around the edge for a deep gain way down the field. And, of course, that's the bread and butter of Coach Reid's offense, is putting guys in motion, spreading the defense out. And Rashee can do that. He can also go down the field and make contested catches. He had 16 contested catches last year and the top vertical jump of any receiver at the Combine. So, yeah, Rashee Rice is really finding his role in this offense right now. I think he'll help us win in a multitude of ways. And Justin Ross, he's one of those guys that probably would have been a first-round pick if he hadn't been hurt for all those years at Clemson. If you go back to his freshman season at Clemson, he was one of the best receivers in the nation. Injuries got in the way. That's the reality of it. But the Chiefs bought a lottery ticket on Justin Ross. He couldn't play last year because of that foot injury, but he's healthy now. This is his chance. This is his opportunity. And he has made some great plays here in this camp so far. He's a big, long, physical receiver who can make jump ball catches down the sideline. Will he make this team? I don't know. He has to earn it, but so far so good for Justin Ross. I've been impressed with him.
Yeah, we'll get into the numbers later. In fact, we're going to do a Defending the Kingdom and just do a deep dive into the wide receiver core and get into that, and into Justin Ross, who I know many of you wanted to invite to your family reunion or to prom because he's just become this sensation. I'm going to gloss over these next guys. We want to get into the next position group, but when you look at Ty Freivogel, Cornell Powell, still here, right? Remember him from his Clemson days, and he's been around here for a while. Nico Remigio, who you and I talked about and loved him during the spring and summer out of Fresno State, played at Cal for a while. Amir Smith-Marset, who's a former Iowa Hawkeye and played last year. He was on the active roster late in the season. And then Kakoa Crawford, who also played at Cal after starting at Michigan. And that's the group. If you want more on wide receivers later in the week, very shortly, maybe posting it today or tomorrow, the next day, we will have get into the wide receiver room. But let's jump into the linebackers. And you had a chance to talk to a guy who's so explosive, underrated in his way of making an impactful play to possibly win a game even on his own.
Talking about Willie Gay Jr., one of my favorite players on this team. They call him the Juice Man because he has so much energy down there on the field. I caught up with Willie a few days ago after the first padded practice to see how things went. All right, we're down here with Willie Gay. And Willie, it was the first day of pads today. It's not easy, but how'd it go?
It was great. It was a great growth day. Not going to be perfect. If it is perfect, then we a long way ahead. So, that's always a good thing. But, hey, it's room for growth. And that's the most important thing. You got to grow each and every day. And Coach Reid's camps definitely make you grow, and makes the games easy, makes the season easy. And when you transition over into the preseason games and regular season, it's cake. So.
It's hard to believe, but you're going into your 4th year as a professional now. Just how are you feeling right now going into year number 4, and what are your expectations for yourself?
I'm so blessed and thankful to be here. I could have been cut, could have got hurt, man. So just to be here with these guys still is amazing and a big blessing for me, and I'm going to give it everything I got because tomorrow's not promised for any of us, especially not me. We're year 4. You know how it is. It's the business part got to come into play. I'm not worried about that, but, you know, it's part of the game, you know, and so I'm going to give it all I got like there's no tomorrow. So.
There's a lot of young talent on this defense. You're obviously a big part of that. Just what are your thoughts on the defense entering the season and where you guys are at right now?
Once again, the young guys, year 1, year 2, year 3 guys even. With Nick's class, they great. They ain't got the old guys like myself. But with us all combined, man, we're going to make a great defense, great team, and just keep stacking.
All right, awesome stuff there from Willie Gay. I'm so excited for him this season. Like I said in the interview, I can't believe it's his 4th season already as a professional. But I remember something he said last year during training camp. He said he wanted to lead all linebackers in interceptions. Now, he missed some time last year, didn't have a chance to do that. But I'm thinking about his pick 6 against the Broncos. Such an athletic play. We were talking off camera just now about his interception against the Giants a couple years ago. We know the player Willie can be, and I just have a feeling this will be a big year for him.
He has the ability, because of his quickness and his explosiveness, his quick twitch, to actually make a play on a pass like a defensive back. That's what happened. Shocked the Giants and tipped the pass, and then he had the interception, pick 6 against the Broncos. He will surprise a quarterback in the fact that he'll flash and be there in a second. But if there's a position group, if there's a group overall, it's the second-year guys that I'm fired up about, but it's really the 7 linebackers that are in this camp right now that I'm most excited about, because every one of them has elevated where they were from the beginning of camp and the beginning of the summer. Nick Bolton right now is on the cusp of being a star. Mentioned that Spags loves to do a ton of different things, but at the center of that, I call it the nucleus of the Spags atom. There's protons and neutrons, but the nucleus is Nick Bolton. And second last year in overall tackles to only Foye Oluokun of the Jacksonville Jaguars. But it's not just a volume of tackles. It's his plays, big plays, explosive plays, his ability to play the run and cover, and basically to be the hub of this wheel.
You can make the argument that he was the turning point of the Super Bowl. Think about that fumble recovery, catching that ball.
Why is that play not given more
It should.
Discussion?
You know, if that happens in the 4th quarter, it probably would have, but he deserves it no matter what. I mean, what a huge play in the biggest game of his career that helps the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. You're right. He can do so much. We all know about the tackles, but also the coverage really improved last year, I think. He had the most coverage snaps of any linebacker in the NFL last season with almost 700, and he also earned the 9th best Pro Football Focus coverage grade of any linebacker. You mentioned how he's on the precipice of being a superstar here. He's already making all of these like top 10 lists around the NFL. He landed on NFL.com's all under 25 team and also was ranked as the number 10 overall linebacker according to Sports Illustrated just a few weeks ago. I think as we go here in the seasons to come, we're going to talk about Nick Bolton as like a top 3 or 5 linebacker in the NFL because he's earned that, because he does so much on the field for the Chiefs. The tackles are great. That's important, but he also makes plays, and he's the field general for this defense.
Leo Chenal is better in his 2nd year. Jack Cochran, the South Dakota Coyote, who last year, good special teams player, more has been put on his plate. I think he's improved a big deal over last year on scrimmage downs. Fun to watch him during the preseason. And then Drew Tranquill. You and I were both excited when the Chiefs were able to snag him away in free agency from the Chargers. But that group of guys right there makes this linebacker core. Just take Chenal and Tranquill, and when you look at Cochran, and I'm going to throw in Cole Christensen. You West Point Black Knight fans remember him as Captain America. He's been really good in this camp. This is a great group of linebackers. There's a lot of depth there.
It might be the best group of linebackers we've had in a very, very long time, which is really exciting. And it's young players. It's not aging veterans who are trying to get one more ring. It's young players who are only going to get better. Drew Tranquill was one of those signings in the offseason that felt like a bonus signing, like a luxury. It's like we're adding Drew Tranquill to our linebacker core that's already really good. And I'll start with Tranquill because he might be one of the free agents we're most excited about. Just you and I texting at 2 in the morning about what this defense could look like. Just an experienced and versatile player, a true jack-of-all-trades kind of player who can do a little bit of everything. He was on the field for more than 1,000 snaps last year for the Chargers. He finished 12th in the NFL in total tackles with 144. He had 10 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, a forced fumble, and an interception. He had the 7th best Pro Football Focus coverage grade of any linebacker in the NFL and had 18 stops in coverage last year. He can do a little bit of everything. If Nick Bolton needs a break, he could play the linebacker spot in dime, or he can be like an extra hybrid safety on the field, like a Dan Sorensen type, I believe. So he can do a little bit of everything in this defense. And then Jack Cochran, the South Dakota Coyote. My wife went to South Dakota, so I always root for Jack, but he's also a great example on this team. If you don't necessarily make the initial 53-man roster, you can still have a huge impact, so stick with it. He was waived out of training camp last year. I think people forget that. Signed with the practice squad, but then got elevated to the active roster in like week 4 or 5. Played 15 games for the Chiefs, including all 3 preseason or postseason games, and made a huge block on Sky Moore's punt return in the AFC title game. So for all the players who might be looking at the roster math and thinking, hey, I don't know if I have a spot on this team, maybe not in week 1, but in week 5 and I don't know, the Super Bowl, you might. So that's why training camp is so important.
And talking to him, he's so confident now, so much more than even last year. Same thing like with Sky Moore when you talk about the soaring confidence. But we'll close this way. The undrafted free agents is another piece of this camp that excites me. It's Brett Veach and his staff doing the due diligence. And the last linebacker to mention here is Cam Jones. For the life of me, I have no idea how he got by not being drafted. He was a high-volume player at Indiana, super smart. He fits right into the scheme because he can do a lot of different things. I don't know where he fits. Could be on the practice squad, but Cam Jones, as an undrafted free agent, is someone you need to watch and pay attention to in these preseason games.
Absolutely, and you mentioned he should have been drafted. If you look at Dane Brugler's draft guide, he works for The Athletic. He's one of the very best out there. He had Cam Jones as the number 15 overall linebacker in last year's draft class. He thought he'd be a 5th-round pick. Well, here's the deal. He was on his way to a career season at Indiana last year. He was leading the Big Ten in tackles per game through 5 games, but then he hurt his foot. It was a season-ending injury, and that kind of derailed his season. If he had not gotten injured, I truly believe he would have been drafted, and probably drafted in the middle rounds. Not an undrafted free agent with the Chiefs, but the reality is he got hurt. How did he respond to that? Well, a lot of players would have left the program, just go rehab on their own, get ready for the draft. He didn't do that. He stuck around at Indiana as an additional coach on the sideline, even though he knew his season was done. That tells you everything you need to know about the kid, and he's been really solid in this camp so far. And as I mentioned about Jack Cochran, for Cam Jones, I don't know, maybe he doesn't make the roster on August 30th when roster cuts happen, but if he signs with the practice squad, you never know what's going to happen in the NFL. Maybe he's added to the roster in week 7 or 8, and he makes a big play, and people are saying, who's Cam Jones? Well, we watched him here in training camp. We knew he was going to be a solid player.
It's why you need to pay attention to the 3 preseason games. Don't blow them off because you're going to be wanting to watch number 44, Cam Jones, the Chiefs undrafted rookie free agent linebacker. All right, we'll close this way. I want to mention again that our live streams here from camp are brought to you by Mosaic Life Care, the presenting partner, official healthcare provider of Chiefs training camp. Their holistic approach and needs of patients first. Again, they're a regional star here. They handle southeast Nebraska, southwest Iowa, northeast Kansas, and, of course, the folks here in northwest Missouri. Our next live stream we're scheduling for Friday. We'll take another look at position groups with this team and have you back here at practice. Just do us this favor. Find your best weather app and keep us, because we got it in today, man. It wasn't like that perfect storm that we had, because you and I were going back to the 2000 movie because we were going to get swept away here. But Anyway, the Chiefs continue to work. Know that every day matters. Andy Reid has all this planned out, and the Chiefs continue to work to try to be the first back-to-back Super Bowl champion in 20 years. He's Matt McMullen, senior team reporter. I'm Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs. We'll see you back here on Friday. Also be looking for our next Defending the Kingdom that will be posted soon.